Hello, everyone. This is Brian Cost. I am your host of the Cost of Crypto podcast, which I publish in conjunction with the channel I have, TINYCRYPTOBLOG. To give you a little bit of background, since that's going to be what I'm going to cover in this episode for everyone on the podcast circuit, just so you have a little bit of background on me. My first knowledge of Bitcoin came around 2010, 2011, when I had heard about it mentioned through websites like Zero Hedge or on different websites on Twitter, where you wouldn't be finding a lot of mainstream stuff. On Zero Hedge, you'd find a lot, at least in its early days, you would find a lot of information that didn't make it through mainstream channels and didn't always conform to mainstream narratives that got spun out there. And Bitcoin was mentioned at the time as being a digital currency that was not under the control of a central bank or federal government. It was free money, not free in the sense of free to get, but free as in free from manipulation by those entities. I followed it for a few years, and then life circumstances took off and took over, and Bitcoin fell off the radar. Then in 2017, a confluence of events, having an awareness at that time where I was able to get and understand Bitcoin and decentralized peer-to-peer open source code cryptocurrencies, where I understood it, where I got it. And I realized that Bitcoin was a product of and is also an enabler of this movement away that humanity in its entirety is on, the path that it's on, where it's moving away from centralized everything, centralized systems and everything, centralized governments, centralized governance, centralized supply chain, centralized consensus, centralized food distribution systems, centralized manufacturing, centralized authority, centralized everything, and moving to a more decentralized, peer-to-peer, face-to-face, localized type of dynamic. One manifestation of this that cropped up early around, going back to, I want to say 2008, was the growth of crowdfunding sites. That was a new thing where people could choose to opt in and participate in raising funds and raising money and also promoting things that they felt moved to do so. It wasn't done by coercion. It wasn't done by a centralized authority that said, we're taking your money and this is what it's going to go towards. You had a chance. You had a voice. It was a more democratized version of finance. It's still centralized in certain aspects, but it was a step in that direction. And with Bitcoin, it is a completely opt-in system that anyone with an internet connection around the world, even if it's just a cellular line, can participate in. It's opt-in. It doesn't discriminate. It is permissionless in that anyone can participate. Anyone from the billionaire to a corporation to an 8-year-old kid in their parents' basement to people in a village who pool their wealth. It is decentralized. There is no Bitcoin Incorporated. There is no one computer running Bitcoin. It's run on thousands of computers. It is distributed around the world. So you could shut down the internet in one country, but you'd have to shut down the internet all around the world and keep it permanently off. Because as long as there are computers that are running, as long as there is one node running, the Bitcoin network will continue to operate. And the beauty of having it decentralized and distributed like this is that if there were, say, a power outage somewhere, all these computers that are running simultaneously on the network and that have the information that the Bitcoin network has, its blockchain ledger, which is the record of all the transactions that ever occurred of Bitcoin moving from wallet A to wallet B. That information is updated live with thousands of computers simultaneously around the world. So instead of having just one backup, you have thousands of backups. And it also democratizes the control and the administration of the network, where, again, anyone, a billionaire, a corporation, a kid in a basement, someone who has an internet connection in a small town someplace, anywhere in the world, they can run one of these nodes and participate in the maintenance and the strength of the network. It was this recognition that really sucked me down into the rabbit hole. And so summer of 2017, I bought a little bit of Bitcoin, I bought a few other cryptocurrencies, and I started just reading and watching videos and learning as much as I could. And I had this burning desire to want to acquire this cryptocurrency. Like, there was just something that drove me just with a ferocious intensity. And in the summer, going into the fall, I had made plenty of newbie mistakes. And it occurred to me that here I am, I'm making all these mistakes. Why is it that, other people should have to reinvent the wheel and make the same mistakes that I do? So I said, all right, well, from my own experience, I've learned and stumbled across different websites that have given me information and knowledge, or connected me to an even bigger and better source of information. So why shouldn't I also do that? I already had a little blog doing a completely different topic, so I figured, why not? So after some thought, I actually was going to make the website Tiny Little Crypto Blog, something modest. But when it came down to having to set up all these social media accounts, it was like, Tiny Crypto Blog it is. And I did that knowing that I wasn't going to be one of these big time sites, because there were a lot of new channels and new personalities coming into the space in 2017 during the bull market then, when, for anyone who's kind of new here, Bitcoin in 2016, right going into 2017, had just crossed the $1,000 threshold again, which it had done prior in late 2013. And from 2013 all the way to the end of 2016, it fell down into this deep trough and slowly made its way back up. And it just crossed the $1,000 threshold. And it was just starting to go up into the 1500s and was touching around 2000s. And during the summer, the big question was, will we get to Bitcoin 5,000? And this was going all the way into August, September. In September, there was a big dip because at the time, China had put forth news about a possible ban. Jamie Dimon, as CEO of JP Morgan, had said, Bitcoin's garbage, essentially. And then it took cryptos in general sold off. And then from there, it went on its slow building tear up to 19,000 and change. And then the ensuing bear market happened. And then 2018, 2019, things started building up. And then in 2020, things turned around. And then last year, 2020 to 2021 is where we are today. But I decided back in 2017, I'll set up Tiny Crypto Blog, and I'll share information with people to help them, to give them tools to understand, so that, like me, it gives people access to tools that would allow them to be able to educate themselves and create a depth of knowledge. So it's not just, hey, there's this asset and the price is going up, the price is going down, and oh gosh, these events are happening. What should I do? It's learning things about the space, the bigger picture, the context, the philosophy of it, all these different aspects of it that allow people to understand when they're seeing a news headline and be able to put that into a context, such as central bank digital currencies and what that means for Bitcoin. What role does Bitcoin play as a network, as a platform, as a tool of peer-to-peer exchange of value? What does it mean as a store of value similar to gold? How is it an asset, a global asset, a balance sheet asset? What is the significance of MicroStrategy and Tesla and Square and now other smaller companies publicly talking about how they are purchasing Bitcoin for their balance sheet? How does that fit into the bigger picture? What does a Bitcoin ETF, what role does that play? What role does regulation play? It takes all these things and puts them into context. And in the 4 years that I've been in this space, I've had a chance to see a lot of channels and curate a lot of content and discover who has a very well-rounded or has a perspective where they bring something unique to the table that adds to this depth of knowledge. That is what I listen to. That is what I read. That is what I follow. I try and learn technical things, technical aspects of Bitcoin, because they have a relevance and they have a place. But I also try and understand the philosophy, understand the bigger picture. And it's in that drives me to start. That is where I started with the Cost of Crypto podcast, but it's taking a measure of the space and a pulse of the energy at large and getting a reading on that and figuring out where are we at, what's going on, what are the trends, what is happening, and trying to sort of like take these things that are lying underneath the surface and put a spotlight on it and say, these are the things happening now. Like when institutional money was arriving, making a note of that. When after the October through February spike in price and all that energy and enthusiasm coming into the space, asking the question of what does Bitcoin become now? You know, we're already seeing it as the narrative of a store of value, and we're seeing the excitement with the price growth and how it is a scarce asset, a scarce digital asset. But what is it becoming now? What is its identity going to be? But it's taking all these ideas and putting it into the podcast. And the idea with this one on the actual podcast circuit is aiming to at least have a weekly or a bi-weekly podcast, taking whatever's going on in the space. It might be 5 minutes, it might be 50 minutes. It is a chance to basically take a lot of thoughts that come together and spit what comes out. And that's where we're at. We'll get distributed along channels accordingly. So with that, I want to say thank you for coming along. You can follow along TINYCRYPTOBLOG, the main site on WordPress. You can also look it up on TINYCRYPTOBLOG.com. I also distribute and sometimes publish content separate from the website on Facebook, but all the posts are on Facebook and Twitter. Twitter, I have a lot of my more lively commentary and just general issues, and get a little. That's when the little smart aleck comes out. And then there's video content on. We have YouTube again, Brighteon, Odyssey, BitChute, and then I also post, if you're on Minds, Gab, or Parler, I post content too, so it can be notified of new content as it comes along. And also here on Anchor and the other podcast channels that Anchor broadcasts too. So you can follow along with that. I will have links and information in the descriptions. And with that, I will wrap up episode 1 and look forward to the next episode. Be well, everyone. Talk to you soon.